Please make sure you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon to turn on your notifications, so that way you won't miss any of our widely varied video programs, including those with me and my friend Jay Leno. Also, follow us on Instagram at Audrain Auto Museum and Audrain Motorsport.
Mamma mia, it's a Ducati! What a bike this is, huh? Today, with the Audrain Museum Network, we are driving a 1997 Ducati 916. My first impressions of this bike are, whoa, it's pretty uncomfortable. It's pretty hard on my wrists, and it doesn't want to get out of first gear. It has a tall first gear, but you feel like a legend riding it. When this bike came out in 1994, it really shocked the world of motorcycling. Ducati was winning a lot of races and championships in World Superbike with the 851 and the 888. Beautiful bikes in my opinion, but they really resembled the styling of motorcycles and cars from the 1980s. Sharp lines, but also slightly bloated. And the 916 was really the motorcycle that put Ducati on the map. It was designed by Massimo Tamburini. Massimo Tamburini was one of the founders of Bimota motorcycles. Later on in his career, he worked for Cagiva and Ducati, and he penned this bike, and the styling was so advanced for the time. You look at it now, I mean, 25 years later, 26 years later, oh, we're on the opposite side of the road. It's like we're in England. But you look at the styling 25, 30 years later, and it still looks like a brand new motorcycle. The only thing for me that would really give it away are these older style headlights. But it is a beast of a bike. Now Ducati was dominating in World Superbike, and when they got a hold of this platform, they signed a rider named Carl Fogarty, who won 4 championships on this bike. So when you're driving it, you feel that racing DNA. Now, I ride modern sport bikes. I have a Ducati Panigale as my personal motorcycle, and although that bike is brand new, when I'm riding this, I can feel the evolution between the two. Both are pretty uncomfortable to ride, but when you get them at speed is when they really start to come alive. A little bit different than new sport bikes. With the old ones, you really sit in them. I really feel like I'm sitting inside of this bike. A new one, you sit on top. But the riding position is very similar. I'm very far forward. I'm looking out of this side of my helmet because my head is pitched down. The controls are a little bit different than what they would be today. The bars are a little bit more down and in. Now they're more outside for more leverage as they've learned that over time. But also the style of riding has changed as well. So you can see it's pretty popular with the dogs of Newport. Now this bike was acquired recently for the Audrain collections, and it has only 3,000 miles from new. It had a light recommission, but this bike feels like it just came off of the Ducati showroom. One thing that I would change if it was mine would probably be the settings. of the suspension, because it's a little too stiff for me. I feel like it was sprung for probably a heavier rider. One thing you'll notice about when you ride old Ducatis is that they're designed for little people. Us Italians are not that big. You can see the handling is fantastic. Us Italians are not that big, and this is a really small bike. I mean, really, it would be the size of a new 250, like a Ninja 250, but it's got a big motor. This is a 916cc engine, 4-valve per cylinder, 90-degree V-twin, liquid cooled. That develops about 114 horsepower, which for the time in 1994 was a lot of power for a motorcycle. Today, the BMW R9T has about the same horsepower, which is a naked 1200cc cruiser, to give you kind of an idea of how the power has increased over time. But when this came out, this was an extremely fast motorcycle. If you give it a little rev here, typical Ducati fashion, a lot of torque down low, and then that torque will transition up into your horsepower in the higher rev range. So this made about 114 at 9,000 RPM, which is plenty of revs. It's got Brembo brakes, which are totally ample for the amount of power that it has, and fantastic brakes at the time that it came out, but not nearly what the brakes are like today. I think that's the biggest thing. As technology progresses, the bikes and even the cars are getting so much faster, and the stopping power is really what allows these vehicles to have so much power, in my opinion. But as I'm riding it, I mean, these roads, you can't really get up to too much speed. I'm really in first and second gear here, but it feels really lively at low speeds and at low RPM. It's funny, you look at the dashboard here, the speedometer doesn't even have 0. There's a line and then it just goes to 20, which is pretty funny, honestly. Ducati probably didn't want their riders to be doing 20 miles an hour. They probably wanted them to be doing 120 miles an hour. But I have a connection with this motorcycle. When I was a little kid, man, the handling is fantastic. When I was a little kid, my dad, who's my hero, I would say, he brought me to the New England Italian Motorcycle Owners Club meeting. And I think I was probably five or 6 years old, and he brought me. And this was the first motorcycle that I laid my eyes on. And it was amazing to see this bike. It was the first time I had ever seen anything this beautiful in my entire life. Don't tell my girlfriend that. But I was just amazed at the styling and how fast it looked and how provocative it was. And that's exactly what Ducati was going for. They wanted to design a bike that was unlike no other. The single-sided swing arm on the side, yes, it had been done before, but the way that they designed it, with the sleek fairing and the underslung exhaust to make it more aerodynamic. This bike standing still looks like it's breaking the sound barrier. And even to this day, people still lust after this bike. This is considered one of the most beautiful motorcycles of all time. But I don't have to tell you that, because I'm sure you would agree with me. If not, then we can't be friends. I'm sorry. Just kidding. But what a motorcycle. Of course, with old Ducatis, it has a dry clutch. You'll stop at a red light or a gas station and people will hear that bucket of bolts rattling and they'll say, "Hey, what's that? I think there's something wrong with your bike, man." You say, "No, my brother, it's a dry clutch. I'm actually very surprised. When you ride most Ducatis, you look out of the rear view mirrors, and because it's a V-twin, it's vibrating so much you can't see anything. But this has held up so well over 30 years that I can actually see out of the mirror pretty well. It's not vibrating too much. Now as we're starting to get into some turns, you really see why this small bike is designed for racing. The position of the tank, so if I come into this turn and start to hang off the side of the motorcycle, my knee just rests on the inside of the tank perfectly, and I have plenty of grip in the side of the turn. Now, that started a real evolution for Ducati. Yes, they won with the 851 and the 888 in World Superbike, but they developed this 916 platform into two more models, the 996 and the 998, both bigger engines and more powerful to compete with the other manufacturers in World Superbike. I think a lot of times now people are really hung up on performance numbers and 0 to 60 times and how much power a vehicle has. But as I'm riding this is a very analog experience to what I'm normally used to riding, because the new bikes have traction control, wheelie control, quick shifters, which are a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong, I love all those features on my bike. But this brings you back to the roots of motorcycling and motorcycle racing. It's all analog controls. I have to blip the throttle on my own. I have to use the clutch. And in my opinion, it makes it more engaging. It feels like it's a lot more fun at slow speeds because I have to remember, oh, I have to blip the throttle here, or I should be lighter on my inputs in braking because I don't have ABS. And I feel like this almost makes you a better rider because you appreciate what the racers of old were working with. I'm sure some of the viewers of the channel will say, racers of old, this is a new superbike. To me, this is an old superbike. This bike's the same age as I am. But I'm very amazed at how well it's been maintained over the years. Oh, a little wet there. And it sounds fantastic. This is a stock exhaust system. This is exactly how the bike would have come out of the factory. You see a lot of these will get fitted with Tirmignoni exhaust systems, which they used in racing and World Superbike. But for a stock exhaust system, it's actually very loud. It's an ample amount of noise. Of course, you accentuate that sound with a racing exhaust system, but no complaints here. Coming to a stop, it's the clutch point. It could be the lever, but it bites a little bit higher than what I like. I might have to adjust the lever, so that might be rider input, but other than that, it's a really, really good clutch. See if I can drag my knee on this next turn, but I might run into the film truck, so we won't do that. But the handling, again, the handling is amazing. And that's why I think people enjoy these so much. You start to ride them and you start to give it some gas and you put it in some turns and it really becomes alive. It's not that uncomfortable bike that's rattling in traffic anymore. It just Feels good. Here, I'll give it some gas here. Even at 114 horsepower, it's still very lively. It wants to go. Like typical superbikes, no matter the power. That's what they're designed for. They're designed for speed. And they want to go. They want to go. Man, that sounds good, doesn't it? They want to go. They always want to go. Well, I want to go too. I want to get this film truck out of my way so I can open this beast up. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I certainly enjoyed it. This is one of my favorite bikes of all time. It's what started the passion for me. We love bringing you this content here on the museum. Remember to like and subscribe. There's plenty of content coming. We'll catch you in the next one. Thank you. Did you get that on film? It's pretty funny.